Today is Thursday, June 12th. This meeting is now called to order. May we please have a roll call? Dr. Turner. Here.
Here.
Mrs. Walker.
Here.
And myself, President Ms. Williams.
Thank you. Can we stand for the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. We have a motion to approve the agenda.
I move to approve the agenda for the Board of Trustees interviews, Thursday, June 12, 2025, as presented.
Motion to approve the agenda made by Mrs. Huvaere, supported by Mr. Walker. Is there any discussion?
Just one. The list of board trustee interviews, the candidates listed as section M has withdrawn. It should be noted that they are not included.
Thank you very much, Dr. Turner. That is noted. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion passes. We will now move on to announcements. We are here to interview for the vacancy of Dr. Turner. Dr. Turner previously filled the vacancy that was created when Mabel Fox left. That term ends December 2026. We are interviewing to fill the vacancy once Dr. Turner resigns, which he's already indicated will be June
17th at 11:59 seconds. I have submitted my resignation to you.
Thank you, Dr. Turner. I did not want to speak 1 minute ago. Thank you, I appreciate that. We're going to call folks in for their interviews as aligned in the agenda. Each interview is expected to last 10 to 15 minutes. And the reason for that is because interviewees have submitted a significant amount of documentation in responses to questions already. With that said, I think we are ready to call in our first interview.
Ms. Williams, just a matter of process. I understand you need to ask all follow-up questions directly to yourself.
Any board member is allowed to ask questions. I'm going to facilitate most of the questions, but if you guys have a question that you'd like to ask, please feel free. Yes. Thank you for that clarification. Thank you, Mrs. Scribner.
You're welcome.
Yes.
They can come.
Anyone can come in at any time. Good afternoon, Sara. Thank you for joining us. Would you please pronounce your last name?
My last name is Huvaere.
Huvaere. I'm so glad you did. Yes. Welcome, Sara.
Thank you.
Explained previously that we received all the information from you. Thank you very much. You've answered a lot of our questions already, so today it's just in an effort to meet you, to ask a couple more questions. This isn't expected to last more than 15 minutes.
Excellent.
I'm Terry Williams. Very nice to meet you and the rest of our board. The first question I have for you is if you could just explain your why. Why are you here today? Why did you submit for your application?
Okay, well, that's a great question. A couple of big answers to that question. First, I am a Farmington Hills community member. I have 2 students that are in the school district, so I'm very dedicated to being in this community, and I just want to make it a better place. My background is also education. I was a special education teacher for 7 years. I've been in the field of education for about 27 years, I would say. So I feel like I have a lot of excellent experience that I can bring to the board.
You answered my next question, which was going to be around your skills and expertise. Move on. If the board makes a decision that you personally disagree with, after full discussion and due process, how will you move forward? And how would you balance advocating for your perspective while respecting the collective decision?
That's a good question. So, by training, I'm also an advocate. I'm an educational advocate, so I spend the majority of my time for my professional career in buildings where I'm always trying to sort of mediate different perspectives, trying to come to an understanding between educational people and parents. So that's a large part of what I do. So I always try to find some sort of bridge that we can try to come to some sort of understanding. Obviously, if I strongly disagree, I'm an advocate, so I will keep fighting for what I believe in, while honestly keeping a professional level of everybody as well.
How do you define a healthy working relationship between board members and between the board and the superintendent?
I would say a healthy relationship between board members and the superintendent. First of all, we begin with respect. I believe that everyone has to have mutual respect for each other, despite whatever differences, the community beliefs, all of that. We have to have respect for each other. Second, communication is huge in any sort of relationship, professional relationships. Wherever we go, learning how to communicate effectively with others as well as hear other people's perspective is extremely important.
The board service involves more than just attending regular meetings. It includes committee work, district events, ongoing training. Board members are expected to take 9 courses within the first year. What time do you expect to devote to board service, and how will you commit that time, including during the workday if needed?
I would basically be able to clear my schedule to make the time. If it's something that I'm going to do, I dedicate myself to do it. So that's the type of person that I am. I make that commitment.
What are your thoughts on student cell phones and use in schools? Should the Board of Education establish a universal policy or leave this decision to school-level administration?
So that is a huge question and a big topic that I think is affecting a lot of schools today. As I mentioned, I'm an education consultant advocate, so I'm in and out of a lot of schools. I see a lot of different policies, especially when we get to high school. So I have very mixed feelings. On one end, I think it is very difficult to kind of control the whole high school environment of students because they kind of find ways and sometimes they may need to communicate. The other side of it, I think that it can be very detrimental and very distracting, especially to teachers who are trying to manage a classroom. I've seen some success in classrooms being able to kind of collect the cell phones at the beginning of the lesson and the beginning of the class, and that has been able to work. So I do think that it would be good to have a board policy so that everyone's on the same page.
Some district buildings are overcrowded, while others are underutilized. What are your thoughts on addressing capacity imbalances, including the possibility of adjusting attendance boundaries?
Well, I think that having overcrowded classrooms is detrimental to students' education. So I think that changes need to be made based on overcrowding. I think that Farmington is a unique community, and I think that children deserve better than having overcrowded classrooms. So.
Do any of my fellow board members have any other questions? Seeing none, this was quick and easy. Thank you so much for your time. Just so that you know how the rest of the process will flow, the board is not expected to have any deliberation today. We will meet on Tuesday of next week, where we will have an agenda item to have deliberation, discussion, and decide on who our candidate will be. Dr. Turner?
Ms. Huvaere, just wondering, did you have any questions for us?
I think that was one of my questions, just kind of asking like what the process was, who makes the decisions, how that was. I think you just answered that.
Okay.
So thank you so much.
Thank you. That's perfect.
Okay.
Yes.
One question.
Well, if we have time, maybe we can. Thank you for submitting questions. Appreciate that. Dr. Turpen, would you mind if I use that for just this meeting? Yeah. Is there something else on there? Oh, where are you? Let me write down.
Yeah. Oh.
Hi. Hello. All right, get started. Hello, Mr. Doughty.
Hi there. Thank you for this opportunity. I appreciate it.
Thank you for coming. So just a little bit about the process. We are going to have about 10 to 15 minutes to ask you a few questions. I will be asking most of the questions. My board members may chime in from here or there if they have something that they'd like to ask you. Because you submitted a lot of information to us, you've answered a lot of questions, we have a lot of information from you, so this is an opportunity to just ask some follow-up questions.
Sure.
We plan to deliberate and have a discussion Tuesday at our next board meeting, at which point we expect to reach a decision at that meeting, so that you know what our next steps are. So with that, if you wouldn't mind kind of introducing yourself and telling us a little bit of your why you're here today, why you decided to interview for the board vacancy.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Doughty. I've been a Farmington Hills resident for 30 plus years. Two sons, both of whom went through the Farmington public school system from beginning to end, Kenbrook, Dunkel, and then North Farmington. We have followed it closely throughout that period and since. My wife had been a teacher at Dunkel for most of the time we lived here. She started out as a substitute, took a full-time position, was at Dunkel until they changed that to STEAM, and then she was part of the group that transferred over to Warner. She retired in 22 and continues to substitute over there on a regular basis. I spent 20 plus years on the Library Board of Trustees for Farmington. In a number of capacities, was president of the board for a number of years. Have always had an interest and a desire for public service, community service. Got out of the library board at a time that I started working in Ann Arbor. Quite frankly, it was a lot of time commuting back and forth. I am now retired and find that I've got some time to get involved in something that piques my interest, and this does. Education and schools and teachers has been the conversation, a topic of conversation at our dinner table since I can remember because my dad was a Detroit public school teacher. Tappan Middle School, Rutherford Middle School, Rutherford Junior High. So it's always kind of been out there. I've got an uncle that was in the Detroit public school system as well as was in Plymouth. So just kind of something that I've always been familiar with and would like to continue.
Thank you. What skills, experiences, or areas of expertise would you bring to the school board that would strengthen our work?
Well, the time that I spent on the library board, I think gave me some good insight into working with a board such as that. Worked on the board in connection with millage approvals, millage renewals, also in connection with building renovations, so kind of seen a lot of that in the ability to work with people. I've got a 30-plus year career as an attorney, primarily real estate in Detroit, in Ann Arbor. So there's a lot of negotiation, there's learning how to compromise, there's learning how to deal with a vast variety of people. And I think that's all built skills that I think would translate very nicely.
If the board makes a decision that you personally disagree with after full discussion and due process, how will you move forward? How do you balance advocating for your perspective while respecting the collective decisions?
I think that's the way things should operate. You can disagree with decisions that are made, but I think you support the group and the board going forward and make it work to the best of your abilities. I think that you maybe communicate that it wouldn't be your first choice, but there are reasons that decisions are made and you work forward with it.
How do you define a healthy working relationship between board members and between the board and the superintendent?
I think it takes open, transparent communication. I think that you go into the situation knowing that there's going to be disagreements, that people are going to have different opinions. But the kind of building on your last question, there are going to be situations where there has to be some kind of consensus reached. And if you're in the minority in that consensus, you understand it and move on. If you're advocating for a position that you may be able to sway others to, that's great. But it has to be clear communication amongst the members.
Members of the Board of Education are expected to become certified with the Michigan Association of School Boards, and that involves taking a minimum of 9 courses in the first year. What time do you expect to devote to board education, and are you committed to something like that?
I'm definitely committed to it. I'm newly retired. I got time on my hands. I would actually kind of look forward to it. I mean, there's been a lot of discussion about, how things should be done and everything else. It would, I think it'd be nice to learn kind of the overall approved methods and work with it.
What is your understanding of how schools are funded in Michigan? And do you believe that there's a relationship between funding and student achievement?
I believe that there is definitely a relationship between funding. I think our schools across the state, across the country, are underfunded. I think that there is a lot that can be done in those areas. I know that a lot of that is up in the air right now. I was almost surprised to see you here. I understand there was a big meeting in Livonia today to talk about the budgets. So yeah, I think it's an area that we need to pursue and be proactive.
What are your thoughts on student cell phone use in schools? Should the Board of Education establish a universal policy or leave the decision to school level administration?
That's a hard one. Personally, I think that the board ought to establish a policy. I think that cell phones ought to be banned in the schools. I would love to see more of the research and data that's been done on how to go about that. But just from personal experience, not a lot good comes from having the phones available in the classroom.
Some district buildings are overcrowded while others are underutilized. What are your thoughts on addressing capacity imbalances, including the possibility of adjusting attendance boundaries?
I think we've always got to be responsive to situations, and while that's always a hot topic and very emotional for a lot of people, I think you have to make adjustments within reason to provide the best resources for everybody. And that may sometimes require some adjustment.
Do any of my fellow board members? Yes, Dr.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Can we go back to the question around funding and the correlation between funding and achievement? Correct me if I'm wrong, but you spoke in terms of your understanding for the need for increased funding across the board. But could you talk a little bit more about your thoughts around how you see, from your perspective, how having that increased funding helps student achievement, or maybe conversely, when we don't have that funding, what does that do to student achievement? Just where your thoughts and experiences are around that.
I think that there are programs and funding opportunities that could be used to help particular groups of students. But I also think generally that teachers are underpaid, and we're losing good teachers. And if you look at the college level, there's not a lot of college students. There's not a lot of opportunities pursuing teaching as a career. It's lost a lot of its respect. It's lost a lot of its shine, if you will. And I think we need to get that back. I think that it needs to be a profession that people say, yeah, I respect that, and I think it's a necessary part of what we do. And I think funding is one of the things that needs to be directed in that course.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Dr.
Clark, just remind me, you did run for board before.
I did.
Tell me a little bit about that process and how this was somehow still found your attention.
I ran for board a few years. I'm going to say a few years ago. It's been more than that now. And Angie Smith beat me by that much. And she and I laugh about that on a regular basis. At that point in time, it was very similar to what I'm saying now. It was something that I thought giving back to the community was good. I've kind of let it lay dormant, but it's always been something of interest to me. And I'd like to have the opportunity to experience it and pursue it forward.
Thank you.
I was in treat to see that you have experience serving on the library board.
Yes.
And a couple years ago, the library was in the news a lot. They were going through some things, and I just wondered, do you have experience working with the board during that difficult period?
No, I left shortly before that all started.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You asked a very good question the last time, and I want to repeat that for all the candidates. Do you have any questions for us, Mr. Doughty?
No, I really don't. I mean, I kind of followed along. I know what the process is. To go back to your question, I actually went through this process once before for an appointed position before I came in, so that was a number of years ago. But so I've kind of done my homework, and yeah, I'm pretty comfortable.
Very good. Well, we appreciate you coming here today. As I said, we will make our decision on Tuesday, June 17th, at our last board meeting before the end of the school year. Well, it is the end of the school year, isn't it? Thank you, and we look forward to letting you know what that decision is.
Very good.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate your time. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Take care. Thanks a lot.
I want to give people some time as the others taking. Just to make one more minute. Okay. Thank you. Is it Munce?
Yeah. 5 points for saying my name correctly.
Oh,
for every pronunciation.
Thank you.
Munce is a rare one.
That's great. Great.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for coming. You may have heard the spiel, but I'll give it again. You shared a lot of information with us and answered all of the questions that we submitted or shared with you. You gave it to us in advance, so that makes this a much more efficient process. We're here to sort of lean in and maybe ask some questions based off of what we've read. And so our board members have developed some questions that we'd like to ask you today. As far as process goes, after today, we will meet again on June 17th, where we will deliberate and have discussion and expect to make a decision at the end of the board meeting on Tuesday of next week. So with that, I would like for you to introduce yourself and maybe tell us a little bit about your why.
Yeah. Hi, my name is James Munce. I go by Nolan, but Mr. Munce, James Munce, those are all fine names. My why is really as simple as I'm just very, very driven. When I graduated from school, I decided I was going to live in China for several years, where I developed a passion for education. I told myself my life would change forever, and it did in that way. I was married, I had a son, 25, who's now a 7-year-old at Hillside. And I just decided, from that moment forward, that I was really going to make education my passion and sort of like the core of my life and what I did with it. And I've worked in Detroit schools, I've worked in Novi alternative schools, and I've done education in so many different capacities that I realized education and leadership can make a huge difference and can transform the lives of so many more students. And so while I really love having one-on-one dialogue with students. I really understand and value having dialogue with a classroom of students or a group of parents. I especially acknowledge the significant work that this board does in terms of decision-making for the community and the school district at large. And I think that I have valid and informed opinions that could contribute to the success of our school district moving forward.
Thank you. Can you talk a little bit more about your skills and experiences that you think you would bring to the board to strengthen the board on behalf of students?
Yeah, I took some notes, so I'm just looking for those. Actually, I can't see them right now, so I'm just going to go off it. I am currently doing my PhD, so I have research skills that I think are highly relevant, whether that's data, analyzing data, or even just reading large volumes of text. Probably on a regular basis, I'm reading up to 120 pages a week just for my studies. And not to say that that's too much or complicated. I'm actually going part-time. But I also have a lot of technological skills that I think really aid and contribute towards organizational skills and collaborative efforts. I understand that a board member is not the board member, there's a whole team, and so learning how to collaborate and use technology effectively, and also how to do your homework and learn before you go into a conversation. Those are all important skills to have. So I have many other skills, personal skills. I have an ability to conceptualize complex complex ideas and concepts and break them down into understandable sentiments and ideas for common people. And I think I have a lot of empathy.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. You talked about the board a bit. Tell me how you would define a healthy working relationship between board members and between the board and the superintendent.
I was thinking about that as I sat in the back. I don't really distinguish between peoples. I think that every single person has inherent dignity and respect that they're owed. And so, at the most base level, everybody here is a really incredible person and has done really incredible things. So I think acknowledging that and coming from a place of just deep-seated respect is really important. But also, I'm young. Just call the elephant out in the room. I think of, every opportunity that I have with people who are more experienced than myself as an opportunity to grow and learn. And I would look towards mentorship and learning everything that I can from the board members until I have the experience to mentor others as well.
Tell me a little bit about time commitment and what you think the time commitment is associated with being on a board, and whether you feel like you'd have the time to be able to commit.
Sure. I mean, I'll put it this way. Geez, I need like a pop mic or something, pop filter. So I'll just say this. Last year, I started a business with my best friend. He's a collaborator of mine, and we won a grant to open up a daycare center in Pontiac. Unfortunately, that didn't happen, so, a little more free time in that regard. But amidst that, I was going to school, I was raising my son, I was engaged in faith activities, I was participating in local governance in Pontiac because of various issues that I felt very passionate about. And some of these things I'm involved in at the moment, and some of these things I'm not. Some of these things are growing, some of these things are diminishing in my life. And I think, whether you have too much to do or not enough to do, I think it's always, about finding that right balance. And beyond finding the right balance, I don't think it's finding the time for these kinds of things. I think it's making the time. And so I'm just really fortunate to have an understanding partner through my wife and an understanding partner in my business who can flexibly give me the time and the opportunity to do this work and help people.
Thank you. If the board were to make a decision that you personally disagreed with after full discussion and due process, how will you move forward?
I thought about this question a lot too. My instinct is not to push the button and, really drive people into a corner, because I think that's how we sort of engender tension and misunderstanding. And so my instinct is really to have dialogue with that person and to really understand where they're coming from and why they're vouching for what they're vouching for. If there's something going on in the background, I think everyone should know that. And I'm not trying to say I'm, the kind of person who's going to expose people, but I think that transparency is the number one most important goal, really, of any group. And so I would really, again, try and understand that person's perspective and find a middle ground. I think there's always room for compromise.
What are your thoughts on student cell phones in use in schools? Should the Board of Education establish a universal policy or leave it to the school administrators?
I'm really glad you asked this question. I'm actually doing research on this right now in self-directed settings. A lot of the research I've done on cell phone use in schools will point out how wonderful it is for instructors and how great it is to take cell phones away from students, and yet when you ask the students themselves, it's literally their greatest fear, is that they'll be stripped of their phones. Now, you could interpret that as a really, they're addicted. But a lot of adults are addicted too, and somehow we manage. I think that too often we're not asking everybody in the room how they feel about this. I think that to answer your question a little more directly, I think the board should make a decision for the district at large. But I really do think that this conversation, this national conversation, is a little more dynamic than people are making it out to be. And I think that getting the students involved is one of the critical pieces that has not been discussed, really at any level. So that would be my perspective.
What is your understanding of how schools are funded in Michigan? And do you believe there's a relationship between funding levels and student achievement? Okay.
I think my understanding of school funding, and this is limited, I'll just concede that I'm a little, unknowledgeable on exactly how funding works. I know that there's federal funding. I know that there's state funding. And I believe that there are also some community resources. Taxpayers are paying monies towards the district, and each student is receiving or is benefiting the district with so much money per attendance on those select dates when we count attendance. And so to answer your second question about attendance and achievement, funding and achievement, I think that statistically speaking, of course, there are many links and connections between how much money a school district is generating and how well students are performing. But I think that we would be a little naive to assume that that's the only reason why those students in wealthier districts are achieving how they're achieving. And I think that a lack of funding is not a death sentence for a school district or any school within that district. And I think that when you have more funding, which, as I understand, Farmington actually does have a pretty healthy budget and has a good, what's the word I'm looking for? We have a good balance. I think there's room for investment, and the strategic investments that we, I guess, go into, those can really decide those outcomes in quite significant ways. And so I'm excited to explore some of those possibilities.
Thank you. Are there any questions from my fellow board members? Yes, Mr. Hall.
How do you feel about policy, as in, should it be strictly enforced by the letter, or should there be some type of leniency or special circumstances when not following policy?
Can you give me an example, a policy like, yeah, I'm sorry, could you maybe rephrase that or give me an example?
So let's say if I don't know, if someone has did something very elementary, let's say they having they end up missing school for X amount of days, and from those days, let's say, require a suspension or some other type of punishment for that. Do you believe that just because they did the act of not following the policy, that they should be just upheld to that policy like everybody else, or should they have some type of understanding or leniency for that?
That's a great question. I don't think policy, gosh, I'm going to really try and step back. I've got a natural speaking voice, so.
It's not bad to us. It may be a little overwhelming for you.
Okay, yeah, it's like
not.
exploding in my face.
It's not.
Step back, yeah. Okay, so to answer your question, Mr. Hull, I think that policy is made to inform leaders in the district of problems. And so if someone were missing so much school that big red flag, truancy officers involved, and, what are we going to do about this person? They might not graduate high school, or, various other complications. I think the first and most important step is a visit to the family. And I don't mean a phone call, I mean a visit. I really think that one-on-one human relations is our greatest asset in connecting with families and creating meaningful change. Policies don't move people, but they might inform us and enable us to make better decisions or informed decisions. And that's my opinion.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Yes. Mrs. Heinrich?
Yeah, I was intrigued with your involvement with the district, and you talked about conversations for expanding after-school programming across the district. So if you were on the board, do you have do you just want to comment on that, I guess?
Yeah, I'm really happy you asked that, Ms. Heinrich. And I think my opinion on after-school programming is there's always a desire for our kids to get involved in really amazing, engaging programs. And yet, being a parent, I'm experiencing the diversity and wealth of good programs and not so good programs. And so at the very least, I think that there's a conversation to be had about what standards we hold some of these third-party vendors to. And I think that, we really ought to look at not just, who is the, best and the brightest, but who's local, who's a member of the community, who's here for our kids, and to what capacity are they here for our kids. I think vendors can serve a lot more roles than simply just doing after school. If we have a need for substitutes or drivers, I think there's a way to sort of consolidate some of those skills and, really just hold the third-party vendors, up and say, hey, maybe there's more opportunities here, and try and create greater partnerships. Mm-hmm.
One last question for me. You said, did you say you have one child or two children?
One child.
One child in the district. How would you describe your relationship with the school? How would they describe you? How would you describe your relationship with the school, and how do you think your school would describe its relationship with you?
Well, I think they would describe me as that guy that's always in the office. I am really involved in my son's life, and so I drop him off and pick him up every day. I know the principal and the vice principal by first name, and I know all of the people in the office. They're all very nice, and I think they would consider me affable and maybe intellectual. I suppose my involvement with the school is I'm a new PTA member, and I ask a lot of questions. And so inquisitive maybe is a better word than intellectual. Strike intellectual from the record. Let's replace it with inquisitive.
Very good. Do you have any questions for us?
I did have a couple questions. Is it okay to ask a couple?
Sure.
Okay, great. Is it true, Dr. Turner, that you're stepping down?
That is accurate.
Okay. I guess my first question is, what advice would you have for a potential school board member? I know that you're very experienced. You were the board president, is that correct?
That is also correct.
Okay, and so, yeah, look, what advice would you have for a new board member, feasibly with less experience, but a strong desire to change and create positive outcomes for the community?
The one piece of advice I can give anybody that's aspiring to be in this role is to remain as flexible as you intend your children to be. This role requires it. Engaging with the public in an entity that is a publicly funded institution, this is all by choice. No one has to come here. And when they do, the board serves. We'll meet students where they are to get them where they need to be. And that also includes the parents and the loved ones that support that child. It is a very unique relationship between the board and the community and the district itself. So while this may seem very lofty, all of my board members that are looking at me right now understand that individually we're community members. Together we hold power as a board to make decisions about the rules that we promulgate for the district to run. But the superintendent runs the district. Right. She is our single employee, and as such, she has a responsibility for it. So understanding that tapestry and how it all comes together takes time. So as an eager individual as I was when I came on this board, really, and you spoke to it around mentorship and how that actually, Mr. Hull came from a very good background with the community and coming on the board. It's a very different relationship that you'll have. And learning and developing and understanding and being patient and being frustrated at the same time because you want change to happen immediately is something that you have to learn. Running a marathon is different than running a sprint, So that's about all I have.
Thank you so much. I guess I just had one question and then maybe more of a rhetorical question, something to think about, leave a lasting impression. My actual question is, what are your dreams for the students? What do you believe in and hope for Farmington School District and all of its students? Let anybody answer.
I think I'll take that one on behalf of the board. I think it's pretty clear in our mission. We're all supportive of that mission, and that is to make sure that every student reaches their potential. That's what we're here for. Whether they're, some students need more, some students need less. We want to make sure that everybody reaches their potential.
Okay. Could I ask a follow-up question?
Sure.
Potential for what?
Potential for themselves. So for me, that means something different for every student, right? Because every student is unique and has different abilities, and it's our job to make sure that they reach their individual potential.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And so I guess that rhetorical question, that final question is, how can we use culture and technology to really become a standout district? I really understand and respect the need to not only retain students, but also to bring students into the district from outside. And I really think that the path forward is through culture and technological innovation, technologically innovative teaching methods. So just something to think about.
Thank you for that thought.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
We appreciate you coming in today, and we will let you know after our Tuesday board meeting.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next, we have Mr. Lubaway. No, yeah, he's ahead.
notes. I can't see those. I have yellow highlights. I have yellow highlights.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. This process is meant to last about 10-15 minutes. You have responded to some questions in advance, so this is an opportunity for us to ask some follow-up questions based off of what you submitted. And we have a few questions that we're asking all of the candidates. Just so that you know, our process will be that we're not deliberating today. We will have discussion at our next board meeting, which is on Tuesday, June 17th. There's a lot on that agenda, but I believe at the end of the agenda is when we will be focusing on deciding who will be appointed to fill the vacancy. So with that, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and telling us a little bit more about your why you're here today, why you want to be on the Board of Education.
Okay. My name is Bill Lubaway, and I've been in the Farmington Public School District for 50 years. I have 3 daughters who graduated from North, and I currently have a couple of grandkids who are also at North. So I'm somewhat familiar with the district, and I usually pay attention to what's going on and don't say much or poke in unless there's something I was concerned about. And that certainly happened a few years back, and I got re-engaged. Oh, by the way, I ran for the board when we had financial troubles, and I got my can kicked on that. So I'm here to improve education, and I want to make education to be as good as and as perceived as good as the education was when Diane and I and the girls moved into the district. And I am sorely disappointed with where we have fallen, but I should be disappointed with the whole state of Michigan because Michigan hasn't really met its responsibilities in terms of educating the children, and particularly some groups of children. And with that.
Thank you. One of the questions that we asked you in advance was how would you build relationships across the board? And your response was that you have no idea how to build positive relationships. So I ask, given how you've expressed some pretty strong views about the district in the past, how will you work collaboratively as part of a governing team? And how would you navigate differences of opinion?
Well, I'd navigate them the same way I always do, which is I anticipate what the issues are. I raise issues on my own. And then when, for instance, I feel there's a problem in the district, and it just so happens I'm not particularly pleased with the communication between the district, that is the board, and the district, as a matter of fact, with its community. And so the way I dealt with that was I said, well, here's what I would do. And I said I worked with a board member to draft a motion which had several elements to it. I then put together, to go with that, a plan of attack, including who the audiences were, what they ought to be talking about, what the board and the school ought to be talking about. And I met with each and every one of the board members, and ultimately the motion was not seconded. I was disappointed in that, but that's kind of what I expected. So the way I do it is I anticipate what the issues are. I am not afraid to do the research and the study and to express my opinions and to discuss those with the board.
Thank you. Mr. Lubaway, we asked you, what does inclusive look like and what does that mean to you? And your response was, teach the 3 R's. Can you explain what that means?
Yeah, that's our job, teaching the 3 R's. Yeah.
And perhaps how that corresponds to the question around what does an inclusive environment look like?
Well, maybe it's your definition of inclusive that I don't understand. Inclusive is education. That's what we do here. We're not a social services organization, and there are a bunch of things that we get into that we probably ought not to be. And I think you've heard my opinions on several of those as we go along. So I guess I'd have to say, whatever your definition of inclusive is, it certainly isn't education, or we would be doing a lot better.
What are your thoughts on student cell phone use in schools?
I don't think they should be using them during the school day. It's that simple.
Are there any other questions from my fellow board members? Mr. Lubaway, do you have any, I'm sorry?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm reflecting on your response to the inclusivity question and your emphasis on the 3 R's. My question for you would be around how would you define inclusivity in terms of meeting student needs?
How would I define it? It meets all of the students' needs in terms of education. And so that means they show up, they learn how to read, they read at an acceptable level, so that ultimately our job is to prepare them for the real world once they get out of the schools, and to have good and productive lives. That's the best examples I can give of inclusivity.
Yes, Mrs. Heinrich.
Yeah, I'm interested in your, what you wrote about conversation of funding of public education, and you mentioned vouchers. And I just wondered, could you elaborate, what's your position on vouchers? Do you think Michigan should have vouchers, or do you think we shouldn't have vouchers?
Well, I think it isn't so much the discussion of the vouchers as it is a question of, are we meeting the needs of our children today with the system that we have? And right now, Michigan is the oddball state, having decided that only public schools can deliver education. And that's the Blaine Amendment to the Constitution. And one of my concerns with that is, I'm a businessman, and I'm used to seeing competition, even in my area of specialty, which is hospitals. And right now, I don't think that the sole provider of the public school system, even though it's 580 different school districts, I don't think they have enough challenge, and they certainly haven't stepped up to the plate enough to compete with others. And I've expressed that before, and at the city council's meeting with the board, John, one of the board members, one of the council members, put together a chart that showed the growth of student enrollment, and he compared Novi and Troy's population of students. They were more or less flat for a dozen years, and during that same time, we lost 25% of our market share. And I think that's affected everybody in the community, and I think that showed up when at the city and school district meeting, where they were finally glad to hear from the district and agree to work with them. But right now, I think the vouchers are not the issue. The question is, how are we able to provide the competition given the education, given that we haven't done it? We haven't done it for decades, and there's apparently not enough of an incentive in the absence of a competitor in the market for us to do a good job.
Just one more.
Yes.
I mean, you talk about how Michigan is ranked 41st in student achievement, and I think I read somewhere when they were talking about school funding, we're in the 40s in school funding also. So do you think there's a correlation between our ranking in student achievement and our ranking in school funding for Michigan.
Now, what, Mississippi just made a tremendous leap in education over the past couple of years, and I'd be willing to bet that if I looked at the payment for the teachers, we'd be way ahead of them. So it's part of a bigger discussion, which is, what do we need? Are we getting the talent into the industry that we need? And for that matter, why should they come into the districts? And we may not be competing effectively for employees. I don't think it's compensation solely. I think compensation certainly the MEA, and that's the teachers, and I can understand it. I have a daughter who's a teacher who has to do some on-the-side work with students and all, coaching them. And I hear, anytime we talk about education, she's my consultant, by the way, anytime we talk about education, she says, well, the money isn't there. I can't believe that they're getting away with paying us so little. So we talk, and we don't ever come to a conclusion. And by the way, I don't think I've ever heard this board express an opinion on that other than maybe they did. They might have had a board resolution a few years back about vouchers.
Mr. Hall.
In your, in the packet here, on the questionnaire, when you said just teach the 3 R's, what do you feel that, what's your opinion of just that the 3 R's are either not good enough or good enough, or are we as a district or a state overstepping by not just only teaching just teaching more than 3 R's from your perspective?
It is, that's a simplified way of saying, yeah, you got to provide a knowledge base for children to go out into the world. And that means that we have to, and there was an interesting book, as a matter of fact, that I got from one of these board members, thank you, Cheryl, which was The Knowledge Gap. And I had for, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, I read a book on basically on phonics and why that works and why it doesn't work and why it doesn't work for this group of kids and all this. And then I had a knowledge gap of my own because they said, well, why doesn't this work for everybody? And I think it was the 5th chapter, 3rd chapter of that book kind of closed that gap for me, and I understood that it isn't just reading, writing, and arithmetic, but it is set into some sort of a context, which is, what is the world like? That's social studies, it's history, and it's the whole education scheme. So you can't just say, here are the answers, because people will come in and will not be able to carry on meaningful discussions of issues because they don't have a point of reference.
That concludes our interview. Do you have any last-minute questions for us? We may have time for one.
For one?
Yes.
Well, how about a comment? After the last board, well, at the last board meeting, Dr. Coffin mentioned a dashboard, and so I took a look at that, and I saw some things in there, and I said, oh yeah, we're gonna work on improving the results for achievement level for the impoverished kids. So I think I've been talking about that, but I haven't seen an awful lot of action, and I certainly haven't seen any hard and fast goals, which are, we're going to get someplace by someday. And I saw here, just on those results, our baseline was like 50%, and we are accepting a goal of 47% for this current school year. So I thought that was the kind of dashboard that I was looking for, and this is certainly helpful. Now I'd like to see some action on it, and I'd like to be a part of that.
Thank you. ready for our next one?
No, just,
Oh, okay.
yeah, no, it's right now. Good.
That's my children's disappointment.
I'm gonna have my own self-conscious.
Hi. Thank you for joining us. I hope I'm pronouncing this right. It's Wynter Wyrick-Fahoome?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Yes.
Thank you. Well, welcome. Thank you for joining us today. You submitted a lot of information to us in advance, so we have your responses to questions already. This serves to just ask some deeper questions based on your responses. We have some questions that we're asking all members, but there are some questions that may be different based on the responses that you gave us. This is expected to last about 10 to 15 minutes.
Okay.
I will ask you most of the questions. My fellow board members will chime in as they see fit, but we thought we would start with just asking you to tell us a little bit about yourself and your why.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Your why.
My
Why
why.
you decided to seek the appointment.
Okay. I am a full-time mom, and I'm a child therapist now. Initially, when I started therapy back in 2005, I started out as a substance abuse and trauma counselor. After about 5 years of doing that, I had my first son, David, and I noticed early on that he was having some issues. I was always in school. I worked on my master's prior to starting counseling, and so my first response was to do some research and kind of figure out what I thought was wrong. I wasn't getting any answers from doctors. So after that journey of figuring out that David had autism, he was about 7 at the time, but I had put him in different therapies and services. I thought that I did so much schooling, it made sense to transition into early childhood development for myself. So I went back to school. I have a master's in infancy and early childhood development, and I am about, hopefully 6 months. I'm on chapter 2 of my dissertation. I have a PhD in infancy and early childhood development as well, with a specialty in autism. So my overall goal, because I've had so many strides and issues with David and placing him in schools, I was initially in Arizona. I'm from Detroit, but I moved to Arizona right before I had David. And I think I moved back, he was about 4 years old. Out there, they were very inclusive, and it didn't matter if he was minimally verbal or not. The simple fact that he had autism, he was allowed to be in various programs, preschool programs and things of that nature, speech programs, social skills. So when I moved back to Michigan, I found that it wasn't as inclusive. So I had to create different programs for him. And as a result, I ended up homeschooling him. He just entered school in November, and he's at North Farmington High School. They have a contained classroom for autism, so I thought this was a good time to try to transition him into that, and then I could start pursuing some other goals as well. So he's doing very well in that program, but as a result of that, I want to open a school for myself. I think a school for kids with autism, I want to start with middle school, because I think that even though I know special education tries to be inclusive and they try to put them in the least restrictive environment, some kiddos need to have specialized skills, specialized services, special speech therapy, occupational therapy, sensory things. It's other things other than ABA that helps children with autism. And I think right now, the way the world is, they approach it as a cookie cutter. And I think that all the kids are different. So in transitioning my therapeutic services from substance abuse and trauma, I also have a specialty in grief. I've started working with not only with the kids with autism, ADHD, any type of non-typical neurodevelopmental issues. I also work with their parents, because I struggled finding services. and I felt like I was recreating a road that was already there for certain populations in certain areas, depending on where you lived in the world, even in the city of Detroit. So I do a lot of parent counseling, coaching, helping them to navigate this, because it's a very lonely feeling to have, you're in a doctor's office and they just give you a diagnosis and kind of send you on your way. So part of my goal is to help parents and families. So most of my counseling, I still do have some adults primarily with grief issues and trauma, but I work primarily with children and their families, just helping them navigate just the healthcare system, the special education services. And so I think a school, and I think middle school would just be fitting. At the time, David was middle school age when I came up with the idea. I've worked on curriculum for it, but I have a lot on my plate as well with school myself, and then I also have a 10-year-old who's typically developing. So I want to eventually do a school, and I thought this would be a good way to start continuing my work. I work with the community, I work with a lot of parents when I can, I do speeches, and I've spoken for the Autism Association of Michigan several times when they have trainings and different offerings. I go out to different therapeutic settings, school environments to talk about autism, ADHD, because I think it's underrepresented in the Black community. When David was diagnosed, before he was diagnosed, I knew something was wrong, but I had no clue what. So I think just education, because my dissertation focuses on how African American boys are diagnosed 2.5 years later than Caucasian boys. And I believe it's not just because we live in a racist world. I think it's the way I interpret his symptoms. I'm gonna focus on the fact that my kid isn't sitting down, not that he's not socializing. So then more Black moms are diagnosed or lean towards ADHD. And so they've done all these services, and they're almost 7 and 8 years old before they get the proper diagnosis and the proper treatment. So I know that was kind of long, but just a quick overview of myself.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. You have obviously an experience with a child that you homeschooled because you felt like your child had special needs. Tell me more about how you expect, in your role as a board member, you would serve all children, inclusive of children with special needs.
So the good thing is that I have a younger son. So he's 10, typically developing, and I also homeschooled him for about 3 years. And we just weren't friends. It just wasn't, he was not as easygoing as David. So I do have experience as well as placing him into a school environment and him being behind in certain areas. So even though he doesn't have special needs, he has other special considerations, other being behind because of COVID and different things. So I would like to be able to serve the community just to help all kids to make sure they're being reached and where they are. You don't have to have a diagnosis of autism or ADHD to need special services, to have other sensory issues that most people don't even recognize. So I think just being able to be that window or that doorway or that bridge in between parents and the schools and helping implement different programs and different services. My mom's a retired school teacher from the city of Detroit, and so I have a very good understanding of how to create curriculum and how curriculum can be implemented, and I think that would be beneficial to the board as well.
Thank you. If the board were to make a decision that you personally disagreed with after there was full discussion and due process, how do you think you would move forward?
I'm a team player, and then also being a therapist, when I help clients on their journey of change, I don't always agree with what their decision of change is. So it's not my role to necessarily have to always agree with something, but I can still support and be that backup faculty and do whatever is needed to get that job done. I don't need to always have to be in 100% agreement.
What are your thoughts on student cell phone use in schools?
I don't think they need them, to be perfectly honest. I think they're in school and they're in an environment where if an adult needs to be reached out to, they can. So I do think it should be limited. I know it's a lot of different circumstances and situations where parents feel like their kids should have phones, but I think they should be restricted in regards to the use. I don't know if that means when they enter the classroom, they're given to the teacher and then returned at the end of the day. They're only used during certain times.
You described that you have a lot going on and a lot of great things going on in your life. Board service involves a lot more than just attending regular board meetings. It includes committee work, district events, and ongoing training, including an expectation of getting through about 9 courses within the first year. What time do you expect to devote to board service, and how will you be able to commit the time?
With my kids being older and David being in school and working on more independent living skills, I lean into my family for a lot of things. So my 10-year-old, my mom and parents and family members can help out if needed. You know, I've juggled a lot. I've been in school probably 8 years because I'm going at a snail's pace, but I'm getting classwork done and I've been able to successfully complete classes and just work on dissertations. So I'm able to juggle. And then even as a therapist, I used to work community mental health for many years. So working in chaos and getting things done and devoting whatever time is needed to a certain task is not hard for me.
Thank you. Are there any questions from board members? Yes.
I'd like to ask the question centered around the correlation between funding and student achievement, especially myself having a son who also is on the spectrum as well, and the kind of funding that one would like to see school-wide. That's just my particular bias. Let me be very clear about that. But what are your thoughts around the correlation between funding and student achievement, especially from the perspective of special needs?
I mean, it's very important. I mean, we need the funding to implement certain programs, but I even did a little research and noticed that the funding currently for special education is supposed to be 40% for federal funding. It's at maybe 13%, so it's very low. So I think it's important, and it directly correlates and impacts how kids are able to be engaged in the various ways in different programs. But I also know that even though you can't get it from federal funding, there are private donors and there's other ways to, you know, make something happen. There's more than one way to skin a cat, so to speak. And I think those teachers, I know at North Farmington I can speak, they are very creative, and my son has been exposed to many things. So I think it's always other ways around getting what we need.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Do you have any questions for us? We probably have time for one or two questions.
I don't think so at this time. Was there anything in particular you guys are looking for in a board member?
That is a good question. I think that's a discussion that we're going to have on the 17th. I think individual board members likely have their own perspectives, and we're going to have that discussion probably towards the end of our agenda on Tuesday, the 17th. Okay. And I don't recall whether I described that process in the beginning, that's when we're going to be making our decision.
Oh, no. Okay.
I apologize.
No worries.
Tuesday is when, so let me start over. We are not deliberating today. We are only conducting interviews. It will be at the Tuesday's board meeting that we will have a discussion about all of the interviews and all of the candidates.
Okay.
And we'll make our decision. The plan is to make our decision on Tuesday.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
You guys have a good day.
You
Thank
too.
you. Congrats on the dissertative work.
Thank you.
I guess so.
Okay. Okay.
After this one, yeah, drink a lot of water.
Why don't we take a quick break now, since we're waiting on someone? Yeah.
Okay. Me too.
No, you're fine. Go ahead. Yep, go ahead. Yeah, we'll take a 2-minute break, but you can feel free to have a seat. I think so. Yeah. Not 3, though. I think I might be able to go ahead and just explain the process. Yes. John?
Yes.
You okay for us to call you John?
Please do.
Okay. So thank you for coming. You submitted a lot of information in advance and responded to a lot of questions that we had. And so we know a little bit about you already. And so this process is just aimed at asking a few additional questions, and maybe based on your responses, some board members might have some questions based on your responses.
Great.
So this should take, we're expecting no more than like 10, 15 minutes, because like I said, we have a lot of really good information about you already. As far as the process goes, today we're simply doing interviews. There are no deliberations that will be made today. We will deliberate on Tuesday at our normal board meeting on the 17th, at which point we will make a decision. We'll have a discussion, we will deliberate, and we will narrow down candidates, and we expect to be able to select a candidate on Tuesday. So you will know, we will share that information publicly, and we will reach out to you to let you know what the decision is.
Okay.
But for today, I'm going to get started by just asking you to introduce yourself and to maybe tell us your why. Why did you decide to seek appointment?
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is John Farris. I'm a resident of Farmington Hills, and I am a teacher. Social studies consultant is my current role. I work for Wayne Risa, and supporting 33 districts and 97 PSAs in Wayne County. I'm the only social studies consultant. That we have about a dozen ELA consultants, about a dozen math consultants, a few science consultants, and then just me for social studies. My why, I would say that started about a year and a half ago. I was attending the National Council for History Educators conference down in Cleveland, and during the Q&A after Heather Cox Richardson gave the keynote address, the president of the organization and she were talking about the challenges facing education today and the kind of fears and worries that teachers have. And she challenged all of us in the room. She said, every one of you needs to be a member of your school board. And I was like, oh man, I'm so busy already. But I couldn't stop thinking about that challenge. As I said in my response to the questions online, throughout my career, I've been expanding my influence and expanding my impact. I started in the classroom, went to being a district consultant. Now I'm a county-wide consultant, and I want to continue doing that as I've been having relationships with members of the Oakland Schools team, members of Michigan Department of Education. I've really been seeing the kind of scope and impact that people in these roles can have, and I want to continue doing that. And I especially want to make sure that my community has the best schools that we can possibly have. I find myself very much in line with what I've seen of the Farmington Public Schools strategic plan, the district's priorities. Some of the things that I especially appreciate are that teaching and learning comes first, that one of the rules that I saw is we will discuss teaching and learning more than we will discuss operational concerns. And that's something that's really important, especially as I've been doing a lot of leadership development work with principals and assistant principals and trying to help them be instructional leaders instead of just building leaders, because they're finding that they're spending more time dealing with building issues than they are with instructional issues, and they want to try and make that, flip that. And I'm glad to see that the board's priorities are aligned to that as well.
Thank you. You mentioned that you're pretty busy. I can appreciate that. Most people nowadays are. The board service involves more than just attending regular board meetings. It includes committee work, district events, and ongoing training. Board members are expected to take 9 courses during the first year in order to become certified. What time do you expect to devote to board service, and how will you commit that time?
Well, I intend to devote as much time as is required of me and beyond. I'm generally not somebody who sits around a lot, and so I am very busy with my work, but this will be a priority for me outside of work, and certainly it is connected to my work. So I'm very eager to participate in any kind of training or support activities that are required.
Beyond your educational experience, what skills and other areas of expertise would you bring to the board that you think would strengthen the work of the board?
As I mentioned in the application, this is my second career. My first career was as an advertising art director and creative director, where I developed print ads, TV ads, online communications. And the best part was when I was leading a team of creative people. And I found that what I really enjoyed most was sort of the teaching and mentoring part of that role. But to address your question, I think that I'll bring a lot of experience from that role, understanding communications, understanding building consensus, bringing diverse groups of people into the room to try and get their approval and get their cooperation and championing of the work that we do. I think also my experience as a parent. My son is just finished his second year at Michigan State University, and he went to Birmingham schools. But I had a great deal of interaction with his teachers and with the schools, and so that experience I think I would bring as well. And then third, I would say that my relationship with my wife, who I mentioned in the application, she is a professor at University of Michigan. She's a psychology professor. Dr. Blau, I believe you're a psychologist as well. And she does a lot of work in DEI and in school leadership. And so that's what the conversations are around my house. We sit around and talk about what is good educational policy. And so I'll bring that emphasis to the role as well.
Thank you. If the board were to make a decision that you personally disagreed with, after full discussion and due process, how will you move forward? And how do you balance advocating for your perspective while respecting the collective decision?
Okay. Well, that's something that I have to deal with all the time in various roles, is having to be on board with a decision that my colleagues have made that perhaps I wasn't in favor of. And I will say that there have been plenty of times when I've been wrong. One example that comes to mind is at a school I was at. We were looking for a new learning support specialist. And I just felt that the candidate that the rest of the team chose was not the right candidate. And I objected, but once the decision was made, I got behind it and found out that I was quite wrong. And that person went on he's now the principal of the school. He's the head of school. And I think he's the best choice out there for that role. And so I think I have the humility to know that I'm not the only person with good ideas, and that if my colleagues have decided to go in another direction than I have, then I need to support that and try and do anything I can to improve it or help the project succeed.
What are your thoughts on student cell phone use in schools?
I've been paying a lot of attention to the articles and research that have been coming around about that and looking into the various schools that have banned cell phones. I think it's a really tricky situation that I haven't come down on a decision about. I certainly agree with the research that shows that that limiting cell phone use in schools creates a more positive environment, one that has less bullying, where you don't have this invisible bullying, where throughout the day the students are harming one another. But at the same time, I understand how difficult that is. I mean, I've worked in schools where I felt that the cell phone policy became like prohibition in the 1920s, that it made hypocrites and rule breakers out of all of us. We had a rule, no cell phones outside of your locker, but you could see the silhouette of a cell phone in every student's pocket. So my feeling on that is that I want to continue to look at the research and continue to hear from parents and teachers and students about how they feel about it, and that any policy that is passed dealing with cell phones needs to actually be upheld, needs to have agreement from all the members of the school community so that it doesn't become like prohibition. In my own classrooms, I have not had a problem with cell phones. There have been times when I've had to have a little bit of a showdown with students, but I think that you can create the kind of environment where you ask for professional courtesy. I learned that from another teacher who, what he always said, or actually the entire school did, where the school that he was from, is if students had their laptops open and the teacher really wanted all their attention, he'd say, okay, everyone, I need professional courtesy now. And they needed to put their laptop screens at 45 degrees. And I was able to do similar things with my students. And I asked them, is this the right time for the cell phone use? I understand that with some students or with some even an entire class of students, you can have a situation where that kind of cooperation isn't possible, and you may need to have stronger rules than that. Again, my concern is if it's going to be made a rule, it needs to be followed so that all rules matter in the school.
Thank you. Do any of my board members, Mr. Walker?
Question around the correlation between funding and student achievement, but specifically through the lens of your work for Wayne Risa. If you could kind of speak to your thoughts around that correlation through that lens, and maybe give us a sense of the demographics of the kinds of schools that you found yourself working with and how that correlation played into achievement. A complex, probably overly worded question, but just to get a sense of what your experiences have been with funding, student achievement, and the varying demographics of schools you found in your work with Wayne Risa.
Well, it brings to mind one time I remember seeing on social media, some company or someone's doing genetic research posted something that said, what if you could predict with a blood test how what a child's potential was? And somebody replied, you can already do that with a zip code. And I feel that better funding leads to better outcomes. I mean, it's as simple as that. When I was working for Detroit Public Schools Community District, and still, that's something that Dr. Vitti, the superintendent there, is very vocal about, is that students with more challenges need more resources. And we don't see that happening. I don't think that there's equitable funding for education anywhere in the country. And the various models of funding, I think, are at fault for that. In my own experience in Wayne Risa, we have 260,000 students. We've got 33 districts, 97 PSAs, very diverse. You've got Northville doing very, very well, but having well-funded students. And then we have other places like I think of, one of my alternative schools that I support near Garden City. And the teachers don't have any curricular materials. I worked with teachers who were buying their own curricular materials. They had no planning period. And I think that it's obvious the different outcomes there, that the well-funded teachers and the well-funded students have better outcomes.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Turner, and then Dr. Blau.
Thank you. John, I could probably talk to you all night. My wife works at Leo Burnett, which is now.
Oh, really?
Just part of Publicis, and I was at Campbell Wewald and
Oh, wow.
transitioned into higher ed and find it fascinating. Your wife is at Michigan, but your son is at Michigan State. Then I
yeah.
kind of get it.
I went to University of Texas, and my dad went to University of Oklahoma, so I'm used to rivalries in the family.
And I know your superintendent very well, Davita. So if I name drop her and ask her about you, I want to know honestly what you think she'd say about you.
Unfortunately, I don't get to have a lot of interaction with Dr. Colbert because, she's running the whole show.
She is.
Yeah.
Which leads me to my second question, though. Have you had an opportunity to witness their board interactions with? What similarities do you see, and obviously you've been here almost 3 years, between the ISD level and the interaction in support of those 266 districts and our district and our board?
Well, you're smaller, the district anyway, not the board. We've got a few really long-serving members on our board. I think Joe Petrie has probably been on the board for 30 years or been involved around it. So I think that one thing that we see there in the Wayne Risa board is that it's got great stability and has been around for quite some time. I haven't had a ton of interaction with the board. I've had occasion to present to them, and for instance, we're currently working on the Teaching Diverse Histories Summit. It's a big conference that's going to be held in August, and shared our plans for that. They're very enthusiastic, very supportive. Joe, who I mentioned, is a former social studies teacher, so he was especially eager. But I found them to be great allies and very supportive of our work.
Thank you.
Dr. Blau, and then Mrs. Heinrich.
Just very quickly, because I know we're running short on time, I noticed in your responses to the questions that you highlighted some of the unique ways in which the Detroit Public School District has communicated with
Yes.
parents. And with your advertising background, I was wondering if you have some suggestions for us.
Well, the one phrase that I used in there that I would emphasize is meet them where they are. Where are our parents getting their information? Where can we contact them? In some ways, I felt as if DPSCD was doing a better job talking to the parents than they were talking to their own employees who have to listen to their messages, because it was like there was no one red phone that we're supposed to always answer. I remember when I worked at Leo Burnett starting out, but there was no email, there were memos, and memos came on different color paper, and you knew that a pink memo was just an announcement of a promotion, but a blue memo, you better read that. And so I felt as if we need a blue memo in DPSCD that teachers know I have to read. But the diversity of messaging, I thought, was really important, that we had billboards, we had online media, we had events where they put out a tent in a parking lot and serve popcorn and try and get parents engaged that way. That would be my big piece of advice, is look for different ways to meet parents where they are, in the community, the students, everyone where they are.
Real out of the box.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mrs. Heinrich?
Yeah, you don't have to make this real long, but you just said that you thought that the biggest issue facing the district is all four of the district's strategic goals are under threat from legislative action at the federal level. And so I'm just wondering, in your role as a board member or our role as a Board of Education, what should we do about that? Or how much responsibility do we have, and is it up to us to solve those problems?
Well, I don't think we can solve executive orders and congressional legislation, but I do think we can be prepared for the consequences of it. And I think that we can work with partners within the state, particularly the legislature and the Board of Education. I think that we can work with each other and we can work with our families and students and staff to deal with that. I think that the biggest issue is to be prepared, to be educated and prepared for when these kinds of things come down the pike. In our own legislative updates at Wayne Risa, one of the things our legislative associate often tells us is this something to be worried about yet? Or is this something we should get worried about soon? And I think that having that kind of threat meter is going to be very important for us to understand what is going to affect us immediately and what are things that we might need to start thinking now about how are we going to shift funds, how are we going to shift personnel, how are we going to shift priorities if these kinds of things come to pass.
Okay. I think that ends our question session. If you have any questions for us, feel free to let us know.
I would love to know, what do you all think are the greatest challenges facing the district right now?
I would love to get into that, but I think each one of us would probably take a good half an hour to 45 minutes
Okay.
on that. But it's something that we will address in our goals. We're at the end of the school year, and we'll be talking about what our goals were for this past year and how we measure ourselves, and we're going to get ready to start talking about our goals for this next year. So pretty soon here, we'll come together as a group and agree on collectively what the board goals are, and they'll be in response to what we think are the most pressing needs of the district.
Great.
Thank you for that question.
Sure thing.
We will convene on Tuesday and deliberate, and then we will let you know.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do any other board members need a bio break? No? Good? Okay. Are you okay to get started with our first just introduction? Okay, go. Hurry up, go. Are you sure?
He's a younger man of greater strength and countenance. So.
What I'm trying to do is if they answer a question that, often in their introduction, they're answering some of these questions. I don't ask it. Hi. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. I apologize, we're running a little bit behind, but we appreciate you waiting.
That's okay. Thanks for doing this. Yeah.
Thank you.
It's a lot of work.
Well, that's our job. So you responded in advance to some questions that we had. Thank you very much. So this discussion is really just to fill in any gaps or maybe ask some follow-up questions based on your responses.
Okay.
We do have a few questions that we're asking all candidates, but I think generally we're kind of really just interested in getting to know you better. To level set, we are not making any decisions today. We're not deliberating today. We will have a conversation at our next board meeting, which is scheduled for Tuesday the 17th. At that point, we will have a discussion and deliberation and whittle down candidates, and then hopefully the plan is to select someone at the Tuesday board meeting. And so after Tuesday's meeting, you will be informed of our decision. At this point, we'd love for you to just introduce yourself and maybe tell us a little bit about your why you decided to seek appointment.
Yes, I'm Kevin Hammer, and why I think I have a fairly unique background, which would be beneficial to the district. I'm a CPA and an attorney, which I think brings some of the technical background needed for the job, but maybe more significantly and uniquely, when our children were quite young, my wife and I decided that I would be the one to stay home and raise our children. So I was a Mr. Mom for a lot of years. And so I had the privilege of being immersed in their lives and raising them. But more significantly, it started me down this road of being involved in education. And when our children were young, I was involved in just about anything a parent could be, from lunchroom duty to playground duty. I was there was a great books program. I was a team leader after school. I was the president of our school committee. When the kids got to high school, I was president of the dads clubs. I was president of the booster clubs. And then, even as we became empty nesters, those contacts I made during those years kept me involved in education. I was the CYO athletic director here at Our Lady of Sorrows. I became a substitute teacher during COVID, and I even substitute taught some during this past school year. I was on the school board of one of our local Catholic high schools, and even president of the board there. And even last school year, the 23-24 year, I was a van driver before and after each school day down at Loyola High School in Detroit. So not only do I think I have the technical and business background, but I also think I bring some unique experiences with certainly K-12 students, I think, and also parents and teachers and administrators, which I think would be beneficial to the board and to the district.
Thank you for that. We noticed that if you were to be appointed, you're not quite sure whether you would run for office. Can you tell us a little bit more about that thinking, and again, tie it to your why you're interested in being appointed to the Board of Education?
I would certainly look forward to serving on the board. On the other hand, well, I shouldn't say on the other hand, if I found that I was impactful, if I brought something significant to the board and to the district, I'm certain I would run again, yes. And this would be for, does this term go through?
26, December of 26.
26, okay, sure, oh, yes, yeah.
If the board were to make a decision that you personally disagreed with after full discussion and due process, how would you move forward?
Well, I think as a board, we work together, we discuss issues, and we try to decide what's best for the district on any particular issue. And if I disagreed, if I happen to be one or two votes in the dissent, we move on. I wouldn't hold a grudge, certainly. No, I would expect to have a good working relationship, and certainly there'll be disagreements, but yeah.
What is your understanding of how what is your understanding of how schools are funded in Michigan, and do you believe there's a relationship between funding levels and student achievement?
I'm not sure that dollars are an issue in our school district or in any district. I've come to understand from people that I've talked to, people that I've heard, that really money is not the issue in our schools. It's teacher recruitment, teacher development, teacher support for teacher, resources, equal resources for each child in each district.
What are your thoughts on student cell phone use in schools? Should the Board of Education establish a universal policy or leave that decision to school level administration?
I feel very strongly about this issue, yes. I've been, like I said, I've had a chance to substitute teach. I worked down at a high school in Detroit for a full year last year, and I've seen particularly high school students on cell phones, and it is not a good situation. You can see the anxiety in particularly high school students. You can see the anxiety on their faces when they're on their cell phone because of whatever's happening on social media. And that's been a really, what I think is for a non-teacher, a unique experience to see that and get some insight into how distracting and, quite frankly, I believe very harmful, particularly to adolescents. And I would take a position on that. I would think we should ban them in schools. I'm proud to say that the school board, the board that I was on at the local Catholic high school, they instituted a very strict policy while I was on the board and I offered my support on that issue. And yeah, I feel very strongly about that issue.
Thank you.
Yes.
There were 3 areas in terms of questions that I noticed you had a TBD to, so I'm not sure if you didn't have an opportunity to go back or not, but I wanted to offer you the opportunity to speak on one of
Certainly.
these 3. One is with respect to the board's role in creating a high-performing school environment. Another one is related to how schools should approach selecting curriculum and library materials. And the third one was related to your communication preferences when issues come up in the school. So I'll repeat them and you can decide.
I can try that first one.
Okay.
What the board's role should be in successful schools?
Yes.
Yes. I think, well, the board has the board's role is, I'll say, somewhat limited to setting goals and working with the superintendent to set goals and standards and a plan for high achievement. And once that's agreed to with by the board and with the superintendent, our job is to support the superintendent in whatever way we can to improve results in our district.
Thank you. Are there any questions from my fellow board members? No? Do you have any questions for us?
No.
Good. Okay. Well, thank you for your time. We really appreciate it. And as I said, we will be deliberating on Tuesday, and we will get back to all candidates with
right.
how that turned out.
All right, thanks for your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Maybe I didn't communicate because I got another question about that. Okay, so I did tell folks. Yes. No, withdraw. Oh, please, on our next one, yes. Our next one is Gwendolyn Brantley.
No, I'm not. But I have to do a backhand to get you.
My favorite slide is over here. Michael can pass this line. Michael can pass that line. Too many folks.
Is that writing bad, or could you make it up? Oh.
Okay.
Hello, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
So just a little bit about background and about the process. So you submitted some answers to some questions in advance, and you also shared your resume with us, so we have all of that. We're here today just to ask a few follow-up questions. This whole process should take about 10 to 15 minutes. There'll be time at the end if you'd like to ask us 1 or 2 questions. As far as process goes, we are not deliberating today. We are only doing interviews. We will conduct a session for deliberations and discussion at our next scheduled board meeting, which is Tuesday, June 17th. At that meeting, at the end of that meeting is when we will make our decision, and then we will inform all of the candidates of what that decision is.
Okay.
So for now, we'd love for you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your why you've decided to seek appointment to the Board of Education.
Well, my name is Gwendolyn Brantley. I've been living in Farmington Hills since November of 2001. I have a child who attended Harrison High School, and I've been so busy most of her childhood all the way up to retirement for me, and I retired in 2010, running stores and working in the school system. I came from the Detroit Public Schools. And as I mentioned, little information, I had a after-school program for many years, and I also had a mentoring program in a high school on the east side, and it was quite successful. It was funded through New Detroit Incorporated. So I guess I come to you with loads of experience, and my thing, because I kind of stood in the background, because I was carrying many hats all through my daughter's childhood. When this, she said, Mom, she said, there's an opportunity here. You know, there's a board member that it's a vacancy there. So I said, well, even though I had a loss, and I'm still going through that, but I said, well, you know, this will give me a chance to delve into Farmington Hills and really find out, you know, what's really going on through reading the paper and looking at the different schools, how they've progressed. I've looked at a number of things here, your Farmington Hills and Farmington, and so I said this would be a good time for me to see just how successful you are, and if I can offer some of my expertise and experience that I've had. I've had a lot of people help me along the way, and I feel it's time for me, you know, to help those that's coming up behind me. So that's really the crust of the whole matter. I want to be able to give back in the locality that I'm living in. So not only just for the ones that are in high school, but looking at the tender age, here you have the early childhood, so those 4.5-year-olds, and which that's very important. I look at reading and writing and arithmetic, very, very important. And I was looking at some things across the country and international, and so I'm just here to really, I want to see just exactly what's really going on in the school, to see if the children are really progressing, and the test scores, you know, is it really real, you know, and if so, and if not, you know, how can I help them? And like I said, you know, I have a master's in guidance and counseling, so I know how to coordinate and pull people together, and like they said, it takes a village to raise a child. You know, we just think that, you know, parents can do it all. But we know, and those of you who have been in education, you know it takes more than that. And I just, however the community, the report card that you have, I just want to see if I can be of help to bring it up. Because our kids, you know, they have to go local, but they're, I always taught my kids that, you know, you suck up all the education that you can and be ready to travel, okay? Don't be afraid. So, and I want to see if these kids are getting prepared to do the same, because this world is getting smaller and smaller, and you know, with all of the things that's going on, we as a community, we have to stick together, and you know, we have to carve out that niche. And maybe the governor is trying to keep people from leaving Michigan, but I always said you get your education, and wherever that education takes you, you know, just be ready to pick up your bags and leave. So.
Mrs. Brantley, I can tell you have a lot of lived experience. Can you tell us a little bit about your expertise and what expertise you would bring to the board?
Well, again, as I said, I have to delve in and see just exactly what's needed, you know, in terms of the board members, what you're bringing to the table, and how I can be of service, you know, to help not just you, but the community. You know, I live in this community, so you're one person on the board, but you know, you're representing, you know, a number of people. So, in terms of what I bring to the board, I think my education and my background, it speaks for itself. And I ran three businesses, so I not only have the education, but yeah, I have the business sense as well. I'm not a big talker, but I do, I don't mind in pulling on someone's coattail and say, we need some help here. So.
I have another question for you. If the board were to make a decision that you personally disagreed with, after full discussion and due process, how would you move forward?
Well, you say the board, so are you saying, what, four, so I'd have to go with the decision that the board decides on. I mean.
Thank you. Last question for me, and then I'll open it up to the rest of the board. What are your thoughts on student cell phone use in schools? Should the Board of Education establish a universal policy or leave the decision to the school level administration?
I think cell phones are a distraction, and they need to leave them in the car or home or whatever. They don't, it's, I can give you an example. If something happened, I was at a middle school, and if something happened, within 5 or 10 minutes, the parents were up there. And how was that? They didn't go to a telephone. They went to the cell phone, and they were calling in the classroom, and they were texting, and they were on the phone. So how are they learning? How are they learning if they're on the phone? It's a distraction, and you don't need the distraction. They call people up, outsiders. I think if they have them on, I know Harrison, they used to say, just don't use them during the day, but I really think they need to be checked at the door.
Thank you. Are there any questions from board members? Do you have any questions for us?
Well, I know a little bit about some of you, so what can I say? I don't think we have enough time for me to ask you as much as I want to find out about you, so that would have to be done at another time.
That's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair. Thank you for coming. If you have any questions between now and Tuesday, feel free to let us know.
Okay.
Otherwise, we will let you know on Tuesday what our decision is.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
I think our next one is Brytani Wright.
Hello. Okay, don't want to be too close. All right.
Hi, thank
Hi.
you for waiting. We're running about 5-10 minutes behind, but we appreciate your patience.
Absolutely.
So a little bit about the process, not sure how much you heard, but we are conducting interviews only today. We will do our deliberations on Tuesday, the 17th, at our regularly scheduled board meeting towards the end of the agenda. You submitted a lot of responses to questions that we had in advance, along with, I believe, a resume. And so this is an opportunity for us to ask some follow-up questions.
Okay, absolutely.
So I will start, and then my board members may or may not add. If I've asked all the questions that they had, they may not have any more. Okay. And what I'm going to start with is just for you to ask you to introduce yourself and tell us about your why you're seeking appointment to the Board of Education.
Okay, yes, my name is Brytani Wright. I have lived in Farmington since 2018. I have, my oldest is 14. She's currently at Farmington High School, and my youngest, I only have 2, is 4. And so we are trying to get her into the Farmington Early Childhood Center. So I am a parent here, and I'm a teacher, only been a teacher for about 1.5 years. But I've always cared about education. My grandfather was a math teacher. My great-grandmother was a teacher as well, and my uncle is currently a principal. So education is all around me. I did not originally want to be a teacher. I kind of ran from it. It's where I'm supposed to be. And so my husband and I agreed that we would both wanted to be a part of the community. We believe it's important for us to have a say and understand what's happening, and also just have a say. And so he sent this to me. And at first I thought, no, I don't think so. And then I started reading the questions, and he said to me, I'm just being honest, he said, you're very passionate about education, so I don't know why you wouldn't want to do it. And so as I read the questions, I was like, oh yeah, and I started answering, and I realized, oh, I know a lot. Okay, fine. This might be something that I'd be good at and that I could help. And in particular, I think that Farmington is a very diverse community. It's one of the reasons why I chose to live here. I actually look at school ratings. Before we decided he was from Lansing, I'm Canadian. And so we were thinking of like Novi, do we want Novi, Farmington, Canton, Westland? We really looked around, and I chose Farmington because of its diverse background. And so I think for me, I know equity is very important, and you guys it's a great district. I really do love this district. But I would like to be a part of the change and be a part of the solutions for our equity. I wouldn't want to call them problems, I'd say challenges. So
Thank you.
that is why.
One of the questions was whether you would consider running for office in 2026. Can you tell us a little bit about what you were thinking there?
Like, like mayor or something? No,
Running for this office.
This office.
Yes.
Me and my husband have been talking about it. I will admit, it's not something that I'm nervous to do, but I also think that if it's what I'm supposed to do, then I'll do it.
What skills and experiences do you bring to the board that would strengthen the board beyond, I know you obviously have a very big background in education, beyond the education expertise, what other expertise do you bring to the board?
I am a few different ones, so I'll say, am I allowed to say more than one? I'm very organized and very strategic. And data-driven. That's just who I am. So I believe that aspect. I loved analytics, and even I'm a math teacher. So in that aspect, I could definitely help. But I also have a really big heart for people and community. And as a parent, also in the classroom, and having a child, and just all those aspects, I think that I could bring a different perspective. To help out. I'm not sure if you guys are in the classroom. I did look up, I know you have CPAs in here and HR and things like that, but I do think I could help with that aspect, so to help bring a wider perspective.
If the board were to make a decision that you personally disagreed with after full discussion and due process, how will you move forward? Particularly looking to understand how you might balance advocating for your perspective while respecting collective decision.
I am a passionate person, but I also understand that there's boundaries in everything. And so if there's a no here, I might just say, okay, fine. Well, where's the next decision, and how can I, maybe make my opinion known in that aspect? But I would probably talk about it with my husband when I got home and think, okay, what did I do wrong, or how can I? But I think I let things go and understand that I'm not the only person with opinions in a room, and I'm also not I don't have all of the answers. So sometimes even if I don't understand it, I allow myself to just consider that, hey, you'll get it later, and that happens a lot, even in my career with my administrators, and I'm like, this doesn't make any sense, and then I'll think about it, and as time goes, and I might ask a lot of questions, well, then why did that happen, and why was that the decision? And then it's like, okay, thank you. And that's pretty much how I would handle that.
Board service involves more than attending regularly scheduled meetings. It includes committee work, district events, and ongoing training through the Michigan Association of School Boards. Board members are expected to take at least 9 courses within the first year. What time do you expect to devote to board service, and how will you be able to manage that time?
Whatever is expected of me, I'm a very scheduled person. As long as I know and I can map it out and just dedicate that time, I'm very scheduled. I have 2 kids, and I put them in a lot of things, and my husband just finished his master's. I just finished my program. We're just very organized. So as long as I know what's expected of me, and I have, like you said, 9 in the year, then I can get it done.
What is your understanding of how schools are funded in Michigan, and do you believe that there's a relationship between funding levels and student achievement?
Yes to the second question. And I know that I don't know a lot. What I think I know is like millage and taxes and things like that. But I do think that the funds associated with education definitely impact the students. I seen that firsthand in COVID. My daughter was at Hillside, and within a week, they had the Chromebooks, and they had Google Classroom and everything set up for them, where I had friends from Detroit Public and Redford and Westland and even Livonia, and that was not the case. My child we didn't skip a beat during COVID, and I watched as other districts really struggled, and they were, you know, like, wait, she has a Chromebook that she brought home? And I was thinking, yes, or, you know, so absolutely, I do.
Any questions from board members? Oh, sorry. Yes.
How do you go about making tough, like, decisions? As in, are you, that could impact tough decisions that can impact like a whole population of students or even staff? How will you go about making those particular decisions that are very difficult?
For me, I think I look a lot at data first. I'm a very in that sense. I want to if there's statistics and charts and numbers that I can look at, that's what I'd like to do first. After I do that, then I would like to consider how everyone would benefit or would not benefit from it, and honestly, I kind of go into the rabbit hole, and then I would probably think of different scenarios. Okay, so this would affect them positively, but what about this person? And I probably would think about it for a while. If I didn't have the time, then I would, you know, in my mind, it's like if I didn't have the time, I only had 2 hours or something, which wouldn't be the best scenario. But if I had like a time crunch, I would try my best to create as many scenarios as possible and then try to pick the solution that would positively affect the most people.
Mr. Walker.
As a teacher and as a parent, what have you seen to be the most effective means of communication to parents about policies, about information, about things that are impacting students, or from your professional perspective, what have been some very ineffective ways that you've seen?
Effective ways, as many streams as possible. It's very hard to get in contact with parents. It just depends. I have honors students usually their parents are more involved, and they look at the emails that I send out, and they're constantly checking. But I've noticed that with my mixed ability or low-income children, the parents are very busy. And I will say for myself, I originally thought like, oh, they just don't care. And then I had to really realize that they're very busy. So when I'm sending an email, they might not see it. But if I send an email, a text, and I call, and I leave a voicemail, and I send something with the kids home, then I'm more likely to reach them. Yes. Ineffective, sending something home with the child and not informing the parent that you're sending it home with the child, because the kid will just ball it up and throw it away. Or just only sending one way of communication. It's just not effective for most people. The top 30 for sure, but the other ones who are busy or maybe just not aware of how important school and education is, not their fault, but just maybe they weren't raised that way. One stream of communication just is not effective.
Thank you.
Mrs. Heinrich?
Yeah, could you just help me understand a little bit better? You said that you were a teacher, and on your questions, you said you had a degree in business and you're studying for alt teacher certification. So
Yes.
just help me understand, are you teaching, or are you going to teach, or what do you teach?
Oh, I am currently teaching. I do have my degree in business administration. So the school that I am working with in Southfield, they, as long as you have a bachelor's degree, you can teach. And I'm currently getting it's an alternative teacher's license or certificate. So because I didn't go to school for teaching, I have to get my cert alternatively. So I'm just currently in that position, doing that.
Elementary, middle school, high school?
Sixth grade, middle
Sixth grade,
school.
okay.
Yes, math.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that a little bit, some of it.
I think that concludes questions from board members. We may have a little time for a question if you have one for us.
I do. What are you looking for in a candidate What are you looking for to fill the position?
Someone else asked this question, and I think each of us has a different thought about what that might be. That's the discussion that we're going to have on Tuesday. Interestingly, as a board, we're not in a position to have these conversations outside of this boardroom about things like that, to deliberate. So what we're going to do is have that conversation on Tuesday.
Okay. All right.
Thank you for the question.
Absolutely.
So we will be in touch with you on Tuesday.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
For your time. Have a good night.
Thank you. Hi.
Hi, hello.
Thank you for joining us. So thank you again. I just wanted to go through some process. So today we are interviewing everyone who had an interest. We're not deliberating today, and we're not having discussion. We will have deliberation and discussion on Tuesday, inclusive of what the board is looking for in a candidate. I think each one of us probably has in our minds our own thought process, but it's not until we sit at the table and have the discussion out loud that we get to hear from each other and feed off of each other and kind of understand collectively what we're looking for.
Okay.
You submitted some information to us in advance. We have that. We have the answers to some of the questions that we asked.
Okay.
So because you did a great job of answering those questions, we don't have to ask those out loud here.
Okay.
What we will do, though, is ask some follow-up questions. And so this process should take about 10 to 15 minutes because we have all of that good information from you already.
Okay.
I'm going to start with asking you to introduce yourself and also to tell us about your why you decided to apply for this position.
Okay, I am Amber Richmond. I have been a resident of Farmington for about 12 or 13 years, maybe. My children are students in Farmington Public Schools. I also currently work for Oakland Schools as a science education consultant. I have a very deep passion for education and for the well-being of all children. My why, I think my why is I feel like I have a very strong voice. I think I'm a disruptor, and I think I am very passionate about changing systems that need to be revised or revisited. Again, I'm all about the well-being of children, and that's what it's all about. It's about the students. So what's the best decision? What's the best product? What's the best protocol, strategy that we can put in play to support all of our kids?
Thank you. Tell us a little bit about the skills, experiences, or areas of expertise that you would bring to the board that would strengthen the work of this board on behalf of students.
So I do have experience on educational boards. I'm actually currently the president of the Michigan Science Educational Leadership Association. So I do think I have some unique insight into the way in which adults learn together and grow together and can be successful together. So I think that's a very powerful piece that I could bring. I also, I was a classroom teacher for about 8 years. I did all of my teaching in Detroit. So I have some experience with students who we would maybe consider to be on the higher end of the spectrum as well as on the lower end of the spectrum. So I have a lot of experience with students who need extra supports and who need additional components to make them feel safe and secure and heard, to make sure they're reaching the milestones that we need them to reach. So I think I bring because I've been at each level, because I've been not only a mother and a parent, but I've also been a community member, I've also been a classroom teacher, I've also worked in district administration, and now I'm working at the ISD level. So I think I can bring a specific viewpoint from all of those different areas of my life.
Very good, thank you. If the board were to make a decision that you personally disagree with after full discussion and due process, how would you move forward, balancing advocating for your own perspectives while respecting the collective decision?
I wholeheartedly believe that as professionals, as community members, as human beings, we have to learn how to, at times, agree to disagree, and we have to honor the perspectives and the epistemologies that everyone brings to the table. And so most of the time, when we are very passionate about a certain issue or a certain subject or a certain item that may be on the table, it's because it's based off of our own lived experiences. And so it's very difficult to not necessarily change a perspective that someone has because that's their lived experience, so you can't really debate with that. But I think there's a way in which we could come together to have a shared understanding to just move forward. And again, as long as we're keeping all of our decisions with the students at the front, then I don't think there should be too much discord in the board.
Board service involves more than just attending regular meetings. It includes committee work, district events, and ongoing training with the Michigan Association of School Boards. Members are expected to get certified in their first year, which is 9 meetings in the first 12 months. What would you do, let me rephrase, what time do you expect to devote to the board, and how will you commit that time?
Well, I would expect to devote as much time as needed to make sure that we're actually getting really deep into the weeds and into the work. I'm actually pretty used to juggling a very complex schedule. So besides my home life and raising my children and being a wife and a mother and all those good things, being a professional in education also comes with many different tasks and requirements. And I'm having a mental loss, but lots of things to do in this realm. And as you all know, education is probably one of the most, if not the most important career choices that one can make. So I'm very used to having to prioritize my schedule, and there are conferences, there are events, there are weekend activities with kids, not just my kids, but students that I've taught. There are speaking engagements, there's prepping for things. So I'm absolutely used to this world. And then also my current employer, they actually sanction this type of work and they support you in it. So I don't think I would have any type of scheduling issues or conflicts with the voting time.
Are there questions from board members? No? Okay. Yes.
How you doing, Ms. Richmond?
Good, how are you?
Excellent. I was following through in your related experience and whatnot. I also saw that DFT was listed in union rep. Are you a union rep, or were you a union rep with the?
I was a union rep.
Okay.
When I was in Detroit for Detroit Federation of Teachers.
I didn't know. Yeah, no, it said present still on the resume.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was like, what's doing that? So I was just curious about that connection there.
I was actually became a union rep when I moved to central office. Our position in central office was still under the DFT umbrella, and there was a severe need because there was lots of miscommunications and misunderstandings around what the expectation for our actual role was, because it was created and it was new. So there's a lot of conversations and mediations that had to happen behind what training and support coordinators were expected to do, required to do, and what the central office side of the job looked like. So there was a lot of back and forth.
Understood.
There, yeah.
So I do have a question,
Yes.
I'm sorry. You mentioned that you're doing work right now at the county level, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Through that particular lens, can you talk to me about what you've seen, what you've experienced in terms of the correlation between funding and student achievement in any part of your walk?
Yes, so unfortunately, I don't think it's anything that is unexpected or new to anyone. It does appear as though those counties that have more funding and more per pupil allocations, those students are allotted a lot more resources than some of in my other districts that I serve. And so we have to work a little bit harder to get those students where we want them to be. And then to also there's a mindset shift that has to happen a lot with the teachers that I work with around, even though we don't have this particular resource, there are things that we can do and need to do to support our kids. So there's definitely a disconnect and there's definitely a divide. And the experience can be vastly different going in from one district to another. But the work has to continue. And it's like I said, it's hard work. I don't know who made that up, that teaching is easy, because it's not. But we're in it for the right reasons, so.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Seeing no further questions, I think this ends our questions to you. If you have a question or two you'd like to ask us about the process, we are here to answer that.
Not about the process, no.
Okay.
Things
So
very
did
clear.
I mention already that we will be making the decision on Tuesday?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I can't remember whether I said that or not. Thank you. We look
Thank
forward
you.
to getting back to you on Tuesday after our board meeting.
Thank you. Wasn't as bad as I thought. Have a good night.
We don't bite.
Yeah.
What, does it seem like you said the same thing like 10 times?
I know. I can't remember whether I said it at the beginning or the end. Or, yeah. Uh-huh. Good evening. How are you?
Very good. How are you guys?
Very
You
good.
guys have a long day, so.
Yes. Yeah, it's not, someone just said it wasn't that bad. It's not that bad for us. It's not that bad. Thank you for coming. This process will take about 10, 15 minutes because you did a great job of answering some questions in advance. We also have your resume. So we'll ask you some questions based off of what we read. And then we will not deliberate this evening. We will deliberate on Tuesday of next week, and then we will get back to candidates with our decision. I will start off by asking you to introduce yourself and to tell us a little bit about your why you've decided to seek appointment to the Board of Education.
Yes, my name is Ron Recinto. I've been a resident of Farmington Hills for 19 years. I have 2 kids in the school system. They started all the way from Forest Elementary, and now one's in Warner. I think you've probably heard that from many of the candidates. The why is basically public service. So I spent the early part of my career as a newspaper journalist and walked under a precipice that said public service. And every day, it reminded us of the heart, reminded us of the importance of educating, informing, telling the community information that can help them essentially act like a community, right? I think most people come from a place of goodness, right? And if you get folks engaged in talking around an issue or engaged in talking to each other, neighbor to neighbor, they kind of act like a community and they help each other out. They support each other, grieve. They can work together and collaborate to get things done. And so I guess my whole career has been using impactful storytelling to build communities. And whether they be, communities of an internal employee base at an automotive company or a small local communities I covered when I was a newspaper reporter, or even a community of like a small group's board members and things like that. So,
Thank you. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience? Tell us about your expertise and sort of what you would bring to the board on for the purpose of benefiting students.
yeah. So I think I'll lean in on the communication side. For many years, I'm able to, through my journalistic lens, I would say I have an expert knowledge of taking in all different sides. As a matter of fact, back in, I guess, the old days of journalism, we were actually asked to seek out opposing points of view and then present it objectively to our audiences. So I did this at many newspapers and even at the Free Press. So the thought being one of the skills I hope I could bring would be to listen to different viewpoints, take the data, listen to stakeholders, listen to those affected by an issue or something, and then sort of, back in the day, write it on deadline, write a concise story on deadline that people can read, understand, and then hopefully engage, call to action. I would bring that. I would bring years and years of championing diversity, equity, and inclusion. Ever since I started in the career, I've been very active in promoting diversity. When I was a journalist, I was on the national board of the Asian American Journalists Association. We were 2,000 journalists around the country, all trying to promote certain things in our mission. I'm in corporate communications. I helped engage employee populations, especially around culture change, pushing mission, purpose, and values. I worked at General Motors, so we were moving from sort of a ICE internal combustion engine to electric vehicles. We had to tell that story, as well as the story of we actually introduced a cultural behavior called Be Inclusive. So the storytelling around that and how to, again, move an employee base or an audience in a positive direction.
Very good.
Well, I can also say that part of my work too involves working with teams for creating high-performing teams. So again, work in several corporate levels, creating boards or the groups of the employee resource group, the ERGs, their members, their top leaders, to get them to kind of work together. So hopefully I can bring that through my listening and observation skills.
If the board were to make a decision that you personally disagreed with after a discussion and due process, how would you move forward?
Yes, and again, in years of covering boards as a journalist, and also from the corporate lens too, I think once a board makes a decision, if I feel, and I would, express my point of view, if they make a decision that is I disagree with, I would go and support the decision in that way. I would not. One thing I wouldn't do is go out and talk opposite of the direction of the board. We have to make tough decisions, and then sometimes we agree to disagree, and then we'll just move on.
Board service involves a lot more than just attending meetings. There is an expectation that you would get certified as a board member, which requires you to attend 9 trainings in the first year. Tell me a little bit about your time commitment or availability and how you would go about making time for board business.
Yeah, so I'm very familiar, again, working on several boards and the national board for the Asian American Journalists. I understand, I'll say I don't understand how this board works, but how many boards work with the committees and having to take time to have discussions and break off into that, and in our case, attend conferences and board meetings around the country. So it is not uncomfortable for me to understand what's expected. As far as time, right now I'm sort of in between roles in occupation. I've been doing a lot of volunteering. I'm scouting, Farmington Soccer Club, trying to get more active in my kids' activities. So, working with my daughter at the time at the cross country, band, orchestra, theater, things like that. So with that, one of the reasons I didn't is that I don't really have a daily occupation, so I could devote time for training, meetings, committee meetings, and research and discussions and things like that.
What are your thoughts on student cell phone use in schools?
Yeah, that's a good question. As a matter of fact, I was sitting back there and that question came up, and back in 2013 I Googled it. I actually wrote a story about a college in Wyoming that banned cell phones for their college kids, and I brought up some fun memories. Interesting question. As a communication person, I understand that is a form of communication, right? And that is what kids use. But at the same time, it can be distracting, and it can be it can take away. I would say that it would, again, with a lot of discussion, sometimes it should just go down to maybe what's best. I don't know if it's at the classroom setting or at the school setting. I know when my kids went to Warner, they were not allowed cell phones, right? They had to put them in the locker and things like that all day. And then in high school, my daughter sometimes puts them in cubbies, right? And they take attendance. So I think it would depend on the need, but at the same time, I think they use them to communicate through GroupMe and meetings, and they were working on a project in physics, and they were using that to communicate. So you can't, I don't know, you have to kind of think about it. I don't think an all-out ban is correct, but at the same time, I think it's just smart usage, and again, hopefully they're responsible students, and they know how to use it responsibly and use the tool the right way to help their learning.
Do you want to ask? I'm opening it up for other board members. Mr. Walker?
Yeah, my question to you, and thank you for being here, is around your thoughts around the correlation between funding and student achievement. What are your thoughts about how that works or maybe doesn't?
So my understanding, again, it's kind of limited, and I had not been in the education reporting space for a while, but I think in Michigan, there's like a per pupil funding amount that the legislature prescribes, and there's the debate and all that. And, I think I've been around enough to know about count days, right? So you have to make sure there, and that impacts the funding. As well as I know, again, I voted on municipal bonds, right? So I know, school bonds, so I know that there's also that kind of funding. I think your question, Trustee Walker, was on connecting to performance or connecting to, that's tricky because I know, are you sort of talking about rewarding high-performing schools with more funding or just in general?
I think the question is more around, do you believe that there is a correlation between funding and student achievement?
I don't think you can just solve things by throwing money at a problem. And I kind of take this from my experience where I worked at small local newspapers, which I guess didn't have a lot of funding, a lot of advertising dollars, and I worked at big ones that had lots of advertising dollars. The core journalism, the core storytelling could be the same. You could tell a Pulitzer Prize winning story from the small newspaper. There was no correlation. However, I think in education, though, you do need funding, right? But I think it's smartly done. There are ways to still excel, with disparate funding. Does that make sense? Just like the newspaper. I think you can write a Pulitzer Prize winning story at a small newspaper. You don't have to be at the New York Times to write a Pulitzer Prize winning story if that impact is there.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Okay, I think that ends this interview. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
We will be in touch on Tuesday following our board meeting.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a good.
Thank you.
Pardon?
Didn't ask if you had any questions for us.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, you're still here. Did you have any questions for us? I forgot to ask that.
No, I mean, I think I've been peeking in, and it's like, what does good look like? And you've all answered that. I'm just curious, more only as a resident, a parent, but I think they've all answered, like, what the future, would look like. But I think if anyone wants to just mainly as a concerned parent, like, just to hear from you.
Future, like in what?
I guess like the future of the high schools and learning and like what is your vision in the next 5 years of I got an opportunity to sit in on an innovative discussion with Mr. Green about sort of how he was doing some innovative things at North Farmington, and I'm really impressed by that, and I kind of bought into it by sitting there, so I was hoping to hear from somebody along those lines that kind of want to explore that.
I think I may have been at that session too, called Reimagining High School.
Oh, yeah, yes.
Yeah. Well, that's what we're trying to do.
Okay.
And that would be a question.
Okay, good.
Well, I think it's really coming from our superintendent. So we're supporting that very much. That's for her to start, telling us what we're doing in that area. But as a board, we'll be developing our goals for the next year. in the short term. Actually, I think we may be talking about that this week, and we'll share that at a future board meeting. Those goals will be aligned with what we see, what we're hoping to see in the next 5 years.
Excellent.
That is, that kind of innovation, K-12, well, pre-K-12, I guess, is what we've been supporting for a long time.
Right, right. That's great. And I know, again, at places I've worked, we've helped do strategic planning, strategic goals at, you know, many of the different companies that I've worked for that have helped C-suite leaders help develop those goals. So look forward if I have the opportunity. I don't mean to be taking anyone else's.
No, you're good. Dude.
Okay.
We are now right on.
I know.
Yeah, this is
I was telling someone, how do you do without breaks? You know, I mean, so.
We're superheroes.
It's like we need to, like, hey, everyone. Well, I can field questions until, I mean, unless anyone else has any, I don't want to.
I don't think that we have any further questions. I think we're on time for our next one. I appreciate you coming in and spending this time with us.
And good luck with the decision. There's so many qualified candidates.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Cheryl, when are we going to wear our capes?
Pardon me?
When are we going to wear our capes?
Whenever you say.
That's what I mean. We are superheroes.
I'm ready.
Oh, you ready all the time?
You are.
Right now.
Right? I am.
Okay.
So we're going to give it a minute and a half if anybody needs their final biological breaks.
Biological breaks.
While Colleen brings in the last interviewee.
You could have saved us like 6 hours of our time by just saying. She doesn't support you. Well, you have to.
Well, I guess it's organized.
I didn't know that, so thanks.
Yeah, that's different colors, yes.
You know, you bring a good perspective.
Oh, and then I have an extra color here.
I'm not going to be, beggars can't be choosy.
Family's not happy.
Claudia, that we got the first one, and that was supposed to be, remember, this is the second extension. That was kind of, you know, I had to.
Don't forget our meeting stream.
We are.
Empty nest next year, so.
Daughter texted me, telling me that she just left to go spend the night. My wife's out of town. And for some reason, I just feel very lonely.
Is it going to be empty?
It's going to be empty. It's just going to be well, my son's there.
Sounds
And he
lovely.
pays no attention. At any other time, it would feel like that. But this thought about, she's 18 and she's leaving, it's like she's going to be gone in a minute. Ugh.
She asked like for permission, she's like, Dad, I'm out.
Oh, she's 18. Our only rule is, let me know where you're going. Our only rule is, tell me where you're going. And when you make your moves, just let us know as you're making your moves. I got life through 60. Our joke seriousness is, if anything happens, we won't be able to say, this is where the body was born.
You know what is really cool? Uh-oh. Oh, my daughter's pushing out. She's pushing out right now, but this is cool.
Who's in Africa? What's she doing in Africa? I want a souvenir. Telling somebody who she has absolutely no idea who it is wants to bring back a souvenir. Is that your Life 360 doing all that?
Whatever it is.
That's so cool.
Wow, can you zoom exactly what?
Yes. Well, not right. I just took a snapshot of it. Right now she's on the airplane.
Oh, she's on the airplane? What is she doing here?
She's coming back.
Oh.
So she was there for 2.5 weeks.
Vacation,
You know, with the
study,
school, studying with the school. Yeah, and then she's going to be done in July. I got 2 graduates this year.
So do they ask you?
Oh, and he's got 3. Because his oldest is in the same as mine.
Yeah, we're good for you.
So do they just ask, since they're 18 years old, do they just?
Yeah, that's good.
Oh, no, mine I asked. I've got, yeah.
I mean,
Well, you know what, interestingly, she doesn't ask as much as she tells. She
exactly,
tells
that's what I'm saying.
She tells
I'm
them.
going over,
Yeah.
it's not like she just, you know,
There's
wake
no
up and she's
permission.
gone.
She's got
But she
curfew,
will say,
you
I'm
know.
headed to such and such.
Yeah,
and such.
you need to- yeah.
4 o'clock in the morning.
No, I mean, I just keep reiterating, nothing good happens after 2 a.m.
Okay.
You know, and my wife reiterates that a lady doesn't leave
Pardon?
the house after 2. About 10
Sleep is good. It happens at 2 a.m.
And
Yes.
then I'll back it up with,
Who's the last person here?
I'm going somewhere after 10 p.m.
Oh, really?
What was your designated time?
6:45. It was 6:45. We'll give them like a 15-minute grace period. Yeah.
For the class? 10 minutes, 15 minutes before the instruction from the community.
What do you think the grace period should be?
7 o'clock.
I think so.
By instruction.
We were planning on being here till,
I mean, we were going to
Yeah.
be here till 7 anyway, so.
fine.
Tell my students.
Can we ask that we take a break, like officially, we're taking a recess? And that means
Pause the street.
we're pausing the streaming. Thank you for that recess. We were waiting for our last candidate whose interview was scheduled for 6:45. That person has not shown yet for that interview. We waited 15 minutes, which we think is reasonable. And so at this point, we will not be conducting the last interview for, I assume it's a Mr. Abid Turpen. Additionally, as we mentioned at the beginning of the process, that Hosea Williams Jr. is also not scheduled for an interview today. He previously called to let us know that he had to make some other arrangements. So at this point, we are done with the interviews. As I stated earlier, we will be making our decision on Tuesday, June 17th, at our regularly scheduled board meeting at the end of the board meeting. At this time, we will move on to our next agenda item, which is public comment. Is there any public comment? Is there any public comment? Going 3 times. Is there any public comment? Seeing none, we will adjourn this meeting.